Shaw Cable, dedicated to the community, service, and you, proudly presents Spotlight on UNBC, the University of Northern British Columbia.
Brought to you in part by Northland Chrysler Jeep and Northwood Pulp and Timber Limited.
Northwood Pulp and Timber is a proud sponsor of Shaw Cable 10 and its volunteer-produced television programs. Northwood also supports UNBC. As a partner in progress, Northwood has donated $350,000 towards the scholarship fund. When matched by the government, it represents a contribution of $700,000. Northland Chrysler Jeep, home of the #1 selling minivan in North America, is located at 3rd and Vancouver in Prince George. Northland has been in business since 1984. Northland Chrysler Jeep is a proud sponsor of Spotlight on UNBC, a program designed to let you know what's happening at your university. Northland Chrysler Jeep, your Eagle and Dodge truck dealer, is where people make the difference.
Hi, and welcome to Spotlight on UNBC for September. 1 year from now, this campus will open for business, and you can see that some finishing work is already underway. On this show, we'll follow the Chancellor on a tour of some communities west of Prince George. We'll learn about co-op education and meet some new faculty members. September means back to school, and a report on UNBC's Quick Start 1993-94 program is coming up next, here on Spotlight on UNBC.
Spotlight on UNBC with your host, Rob Van Adricum.
The first floor of the library here will eventually house 44 classrooms, and some of them are being built already, as you can see. Students won't be up here for another year, but UNBC's second academic year, the Quick Start 93-94 program, starts this fall. And teaching centers are located in Prince George, Fort St. John, and Terrace. But students across northern BC will have access to many of those courses through audio conferencing.
I had applied in January from New Brunswick, and I had some friends that moved out here, and I decided that I wanted to go. And I had been going to school part-time at UNB in New Brunswick, so I applied to come out here and thought it'd be kind of fun to go to a new school.
Why? The question everybody who's watching this was, why did you come here from New Brunswick?
Just for a change of scenery, just something different. I've been going to school part-time, so I'm going to finish my degree out here, and I wouldn't mind eventually teaching out here, so.
Interesting. Because we've had actually faculty come from that far away, but we haven't had any students until now.
Actually, you'd be surprised. There's a lot of people from the East Coast and Prince George. It's amazing. I've met, I wouldn't even want to count, couldn't even tell you how many. Actually, I know another girl that's going to be applying to go to UNBC, but she's going to have to wait till it fully opens for forestry. So.
Kelly Breen may be unusual in the sense she has traveled across Canada to take courses at UNBC, but her enthusiasm for BC's Northern U is not unusual. Her fellow students, Brad and Beverly Freathy and Jackie Watson, are also looking forward to being a part of UNBC.
So that moving to Northern BC from the interior was a big pull, a big draw to come up here and take courses. Most of the students that I know that go to, in the psychology profession, choose to move up north when they're done. So to come up here and actually have your degree and get to know your community, get to know what the needs are from the business point of view, to be here already and come out with your degree, having made contacts, is an incredible advantage, as opposed to being in the south, getting your degree there, and then applying without ever having made a rapport with anybody in the community.
I feel personally that the academic standard is going to have to be higher here because, you know, the university will be trying to make a name for itself. So that's really all I'm concerned about is, you know, the academic level, and I'm sure it'll be great.
And change, you get a chance to do new things, and part of being human is being dynamic. Part of being part of a new university is they'll incorporate and integrate the new changes and what people want, as opposed to staying set and what they're accustomed to doing, ways of doing policies. Having a new university, you get to combine to pick the best. So being part of that process is fun and exciting, because eventually someday my children will want to go to a university. And if I've been part of that growing process, there's a foundation set from this era and not from, like you say, years ago, my grandparents' age.
A lot of people really appreciate the chance to get into something that's new and be a part. Like, it would be very exciting to be the first graduating class out of UNBC. So, and depending on what type of profs, who the profs are, I'm sure you're going to have professors coming from all over Canada, which is going to be a draw to students. And the courses, I'm sure, from what I've understood, well, from what I've heard, I'm sure their forestry program here is going to be very good. So that'll be a big draw. And as long as their programs are fully developed and well, the instructors are good, then you shouldn't have any problem drawing people.
I've already been phoned by the Dean of Psychology, and all I did was make a question at registration level about certain courses. And I got a phone call from this man, identified himself, and said, I understand that you have these courses that you're asking questions about, and I have a message here to call you. And I said, I'm sorry, you've taken me off guard. I didn't leave a message, but I appreciate you calling. Could you hold on for a few minutes? To have, you wouldn't get that in the university setting. Your name would never have made it past that casual inquiry. And to have somebody at that position phone you doesn't happen elsewhere. It's never happened elsewhere, even at a college level.
I've met everyone in the office there, Nicole and is it Doreen?
Darlene.
Darlene, who's helped us out a lot there,
Yeah, no, it's been great.
Yeah.
Everyone's been really helpful, and I mean, we understand that university's new, and so, but
well, it's nice to get involved with something that's right off the ground level.
Most people were surprised when I was talking about coming out here to go to school. They didn't realize that they automatically say, oh, you're going to UBC. No, UNBC, it's in northern British Columbia. Oh, I didn't realize they had a university. So it's, like most schools, it'll take some time to get a reputation built up, but you get some students from other places coming in and word of mouth starts to travel.
I worked as a probation officer in Kelowna doing my practicum, and we'd already made contacts up here for what I would do when I graduated. What happened was when they open a Costco and they only give you 5 months notice, and they say, we're opening here. Anybody who wants to transfer, apply. That toss-up, I didn't want to move. Financially, it's not a good position for a student to move at the same time, but to do a direct transfer, be able to keep my part-time position, the wage I make, and still have physical labor, as well as get my foot in the door in the university and be able to graduate, it's not something you give up.
What feature do you identify with UNBC?
Oh, geez, got me on that one. I haven't even been to the campus yet. I hate to say that. I think it's probably what's going to be the biggest draw is the fact that they are opening their doors for a lot of people that might not otherwise have an opportunity to go to school, and it's great that they're here, because it's important to have a school in an area where there's a lot of people that might not necessarily get to go otherwise.
The only real interest I have in UNBC setting up in Prince George, and anything I would put towards students to advocate for UNBC, is the fact that they have been so open, the fact that they are new, they're not institutionalized already, and it's an opportunity to see some change, some growth, and to have an input as a student. So you're not just a number. And so many students who've gone away for their first year from a northern area, northern city, experience being a number. And it's not the same here. It's like your phone and, hi, this is Jackie. Oh, hi, how are you? Just a second, I remember we talked about this. That's incredible. That part of it, I would encourage anybody who wants to go away to even their first year to experience UNBC, even though it's a baby university.
Universities have been criticized for producing graduates who may have the theoretical knowledge but who often lack the skills necessary for today's workplace. Co-op education is planning to change that by finding practical work experience for students to complement their academic programs. UNBC's Faculty of Natural Resources and Environmental Studies recently received a $200,000 federal grant to develop the program in that faculty.
A lot of the employers in northern British Columbia are within the resource sector. So it made a lot of sense if you were going to start off cooperative education to start off in an area where in fact you had employers out there that were capable of taking students on. To get an idea of what sort of opportunities might be there for the students, we surveyed both the private and public sector employers within the region and to a lesser extent within the total province. And the results of that were extremely encouraging. We had, I think, something in the neighborhood of a 70% response, and a number of positions basically were made available for students, and the employers gave us a list of almost 250 job opportunities based on that survey.
Being in co-op program allows me to experience a lot of different fields, and I'm in biology co-op, and a lot of people go into their area not knowing exactly what they do or knowing what it entails. So you get a lot of experience in different fields, and you can sort of feel things out, go to a job for 4 months, try it out, see if you like it. If you don't, try something different the next time. And you get a lot of excellent contacts. You can, it's just an excellent way to get your foot in the door.
When the employer looks at a resume and sees this various work experience, I think getting a reference from one of those former employees is probably more valuable than getting a reference from a former teacher, for example. But there's only, it's not the only employer aspect to it as well. We employ them not as graduates, but as students. And I think creating that opportunity has probably as much benefit, if not more, for us than it does for the students themselves. Because we develop contacts. Kathy talked about developing contacts. Well, we also develop contacts with the different university programs. We develop contacts with different university professors, for example. We gain the advantage of having students coming from different locations and having different experience and different motivations. The students all, we've had very good success with co-op students. We don't get any people who don't want to work. They all want to work because it's not work to them, it's part of their learning experience. So it's been very beneficial to us.
Just last semester I was talking to one of my coordinators, and she was saying that the number of students that graduate from the co-op program that get a job afterwards is approximately 90% of the graduates, whereas those people that don't go through co-op, it's about 60%. So there's quite a difference there.
Let me give you an example from a situation I was in prior to coming to the University of Northern British Columbia. I was chair of program Natural Resource Sciences at Washington State University, and on our external advisory committee were again representatives from the private sector as well as the public sector. And one of those private sector employers was the Weyerhaeuser company. And Weyerhaeuser had basically decided that it didn't want to hire people in the future directly out of school. If it had to, it would, but it wanted to basically develop people within the organizational structure. And felt the best way to do that was to get students while they were still in a university program, bring them on cooperative education, in effect test them before they had to hire them on a permanent basis, and get a sense of where they might fit best into the organizational structure. So that Weyerhaeuser was basically pointing towards a future where virtually all of their new hires would be people that they had in fact groomed through a cooperative education type of experience. My sense is that we will see more and more of this type of relationship between employers and graduates of universities in the future.
Summer is normally seen as a quiet time for schools, but the same could not be said for UNBC this past summer. Many of the first faculty came on board. This and future spotlights will introduce you to some of the academics joining Canada's newest university. This month, Dana Edge, Robin Fisher, and Larry Woods.
I've come from an international relations program. International studies, however, the term has been chosen deliberately to differentiate it from international relations. International relations traditionally is resident within political science programs. We've chosen the term international studies to indicate that we are interested in going beyond the political when we look at international transactions, beyond the political to the economic, social, cultural, environmental, linguistic. Indeed, our students will have to take 2 years of language trainings in the language of their choice. And that is a very important difference between us and other programs within the province.
International studies at UNBC will focus on the circumpolar and Pacific Rim regions. Asia-Pacific Diplomacy is the title of a book just written by Larry Woods, who earned his PhD in Australia and taught at both Bishop's University and UBC before coming to UNBC.
This type of map signals the type of perception that we at UNBC will be working to change. Our educational roots in many cases come from Europe. The maps that many of our forefathers after our Aboriginal peoples brought with them to North America have, of course, European roots. And so they tend to be focused on Europe. Europe lies in the middle of the map. The problem that this poses is that it does suggest that the Far East is far away. We in British Columbia know only too well that it's not that far away. I don't want to suggest that you can get there in a couple of hours. But we do want to emphasize the unity of the Pacific Ocean and how that creates, in many people's view, a Pacific community. And to have a community, you have to have a singular vision. So we want to bring the two sides of the map together, and we would favor a Pacific-centered map.
I worked at Memorial University in Newfoundland for 7 years, and I was basically recruited there to do their outpost nursing program. After being there 7 years and having run the program and also doing work with the undergraduate students, I decided to come to UNBC basically because of two reasons. First, they have primary health care as a major focus in the health division here, and also the focus on native health. And those are two areas that I'm very interested in.
Why not somewhere else? Or is this quite rare for the university to be focusing on these types of areas?
It is rather unique to have primary health care as a major focus in a whole program at this particular time. There's movement in government to go this way, but it hasn't really hit universities in a large way yet. So this is very unique.
Primary health care, or community-based health care, represents a major shift in healthcare policy and provides a major opportunity for UNBC. The nursing program, however, will also focus on the healthcare needs of the North.
The program as we envision it at this point, which is in its infancy stage in terms of development, is that we will be providing a post-RN program starting in September of '94. Concurrently, however, we will be working with the community colleges to develop a 4-year program, and people that are interested in going into nursing will continue to take their first 2 years at one of the community colleges, and then after the second year, if they choose to go on to get a degree, then they would then apply to come into UNBC. Therefore, we'll be teaching basically years 3 and 4 of the nursing program. We would also really like to get a master's program started within the next year and a half.
One of the issues that concerned me about the other universities was that I didn't think, maybe from my own particular point of view, that they did enough BC history, let alone the history of northern British Columbia. No, I think it's been neglected. Most of the written history of British Columbia is written from a southern perspective or about the south. So in the history program at UNBC, we're going to emphasize northern British Columbia. And I want to do that in a number of ways, both in terms of faculty research, and one of the things we need to do is gather some of the manuscript record of northern British Columbia, and in terms of teaching. And there'll be a number of courses that will focus on northern British Columbia, one of which will be a research and methods course in local history, in which we'll get students working on problems, historical problems to do with northern BC.
To let them discover for themselves the history without having to read it in a book.
Well, since there are no books, we're going to have to let them discover it for themselves, at least for a while, yeah.
Before coming to UNBC, Robin Fisher spent nearly 20 years at Simon Fraser University and sees both similarities and differences between SFU and UNBC.
SFU was established in a very different period of time and different context from UNBC. I mean, the 60s are very different from the 90s, and maybe one doesn't have to go into too much detail on that. One difference is that SFU had to scramble for whatever faculty it could get, whereas we sort of will be hiring faculty in what crudely is a buyer's market, and can pick and choose much more. So I think both universities arose out of a crisis in education and higher education, but I think the differences between the two are rather more marked than the similarities.
The large influx of employees recently has meant UNBC has had to find additional quarters besides this main office. Relief has been found in a former hardware store in downtown Prince George, which will be housing the bookstore and other services. Plans for a spring 1994 convocation ceremony are being made. An exact date has not been set, but it's hoped the event can be held in Prince George's new Civic Center. It's also hoped that Governor General Ray Natishin will be on hand to award honorary and undergraduate degrees and officially present UNBC's heraldic symbols. Look for updates here on Spotlight on UNBC. While UNBC will have its first graduates before the launch of full operations, the courses planned for 1994 and beyond are contained in the university's first full calendar, almost complete. The 100-plus page draft calendar listing the courses and prerequisites needed for earning UNBC degrees will likely be available this fall. Preparations are also being made for a fall First Nations Forum planned for November 3rd to 5th in Prince George. The forum will continue the consultation on First Nations programs and acknowledge 1993 as the International Year of Indigenous Peoples. Two members of UNBC's Office of Communications visited southern media outlets in July to pass on information about UNBC to an audience which typically knows little of Canada's newest university. Recent reports from the southern media have included radio talk shows, television interviews, a full-page report in the Vancouver Sun, which reaches about 250,000 people every day, and a front-page article in BC Report. Two reps from Scandinavia's largest university visited UNBC recently. The two officials from Lund University spent a few days at UNBC talking about faculty and student exchanges between the two institutions. The two visitors are head of the Canadian Studies programs at the Swedish university, which has 32,000 students. Public bus tours of the campus this summer allowed anyone to check out the progress for themselves. Several hundred took the opportunity and were led by UNBC tour guides Suzanne Kennedy and Carmen Pickering.
A lot of people are really excited about what they see. They're really surprised that there's more than just the library. General perception is that there has been a lot of development. They realize there's a lot more work to be done, but everybody's really pleased with what they see.
The phone number at UNBC has changed. The new main number is 960-5555. The UNBC info line can be reached by calling 960-5678, and free copies of the guide to UNBC can be requested by calling 960-5666. The 960 exchange will be the university's permanent prefix and has been implemented before the move to the Cranbrook Hill campus. UNBC Chancellor Iona Campagnolo and a number of UNBC officials hit the road this summer and made a number of stops along the Yellowhead Highway west of Prince George. The first stop, Vanderhoof, and a trip to the Yirka Dene Language Institute to talk about the hiring of First Nations language teachers.
These universities have not made themselves places where First Nations people come as teachers. We need First Nations people to come to help us learn the language, to help us learn about the culture, to help us learn about the worldview and the way in which you understand this part of the world.
A lot of them have the skills and the knowledge, and they can apply these in teaching situations, but they don't have the degrees, they don't have the papers that say they have a degree, and sometimes they're not recognized because of that. So I find in that way the system isn't effectual. But I think UNBC, because of their philosophy, from what I hear, might be the beginning.
A public information meeting in Vanderhoof allowed for general discussion about UNBC. A stop in Burns Lake rounded out the agenda for day one.
We've got the right idea right now with a smaller base. I mean, it's not going to be small. It's 7,000 to 8,000 student main goal right now, but that's perfect, I think. You can't go shooting for stars, building buildings everywhere. You don't have the person base in the north to support something like that, but you have the opportunity to build incredible quality out of it, and that's, I think, what we need in the north more than anything. I think people from my generation have taken a wait-and-see attitude towards UNBC right now. It's not a viable option because it isn't open yet, and we don't know what's going to be coming from it. But I think it's going to start out with being a lot of more mature students going to it, but I'd say inside 2 or 3 years, there's going to be a flux. maybe even less, hopefully. There will be a reaction right away, and hopefully it'll be in large numbers in 2 or 3 years. I see it's going to be a credibility game. UNBC is starting to prove right now, before it even opens, that it's going to be a credible intellectual, educational base. And once it opens and starts proving that, the rest will just be elementary, I think.
Life is a highway. I wanna ride it all night long.
Following the Yellowhead Highway to Smithers, Day 2 began with a public information meeting in the shadow of Hudson's Bay Mountain.
Accessing the people in the community is a big part, because the university, you know, is in Prince George, and you guys are so spread out that it's important to really access people in the communities. For me, it's not. I'm a student now at the University of Northern BC, and going into my 3rd and 4th year courses, and it's not feasible. I have a family, and I work, and it's not feasible for me to go to the university in Prince George. So by being able to access, through teleconferencing and such, being able to access courses in my community are a bonus. I think you guys are definitely in the right direction. The only thing is that you have to make sure they're courses that the community wants, and communicating with the people in the community to make sure that they know about the courses and that kind of thing. Once it takes off, it's really going to take off, you know, and I see you're going to see more and more of a need, maybe, you know, even a demand enough to bring in instructors into the communities and offer courses, because everybody wants them. Everybody, it's a big part of life now, is to enrich. Education is the key.
After stopping in Morristown, the group arrived in Hazelton for an evening ceremony in honor of Ron Sebastian, who carved the university's ceremonial chairs and talking stick.
No one would ever know we were inside an old hockey rink.
It's quite an honor for an artist like myself to be chosen to do chair for the University of Northern BC.
Throughout these cities and all these towns, it's in my blood and it's all around. I loved you now like I loved you then. This is the road and these are the hills.
If it's Kitwanga, it must be Day 3. The final visit on this trip along Highway 16 took the Chancellor to meetings with the Gitwangak and Gitanyow hereditary chiefs.
I think there's a need for more people for a post-secondary education. We need people in the forest industry, the forestry component, sort of the technical training. And the same thing with the fisheries. A lot of our territory involves a lot of fishery issues, and it requires technical skills, and we need to have trained people for that.
That's obviously a need right now.
Well, we need it yesterday. We have a lot of work to do here, but we don't have the skills to do it.
Life is a highway. I wanna ride it all night long. If you're going my way, I wanna drive it all night long.
Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Spotlight on UNBC. Tune in next month to find out more of what's happening at the University of Northern British Columbia.